What's up everyone? Today I wanted to share an update to my Path of Exile 2 Avatar Monk build. So since the last video, I've updated pretty much everything, the jewels, the gear, the skill tree. I made changes pretty much everywhere. And now it is just clearing everything. It is my favorite build in the game by far. It's what I'm playing every single day. So I'm getting around 180k DPS just sat in the hideout. And then when you go out into combat and you have the charged staff and you drop the bell, you get up to around 600k. This build can clear pretty much everything. You've got really good defenses, really good evasion, energy shield. You can pretty much clear everything at endgame, no problem. And it's nowhere near as expensive to set up as like a stat stacker. Like you don't need the really expensive chest piece. You don't need the really expensive stellar amulet. So yeah, anybody can get into this. I'm going to show in the build guide as well. There's an early game version as soon as you hit endgame. There's a version as soon as you want to start pushing tier 15 maps. And this will be the final version. Once you have some decent gear. And with this, you can do pretty much everything. I've been farming the Breachstone boss on repeat. I've been farming the Trials of Sekima, all 4 floors and into the treasure room, just to farm for gear and jewels and stuff. So yeah, let's get into the details on this. Okay, so I quickly want to go over how the build works and where all of our damage is coming from. If you've never played a build like this and you're not sure if it's for you. So let me just do this. We'll go into here. So first up, this build is a Herald build, which means we rely on the Herald of Ice and the Herald of Thunder for those massive screen clears. And if you've never played one, the way they work is basically you have Herald of Ice and you have Herald of Thunder, and you put the Lightning Infusion in the Ice Herald and the Ice Infusion in the Cold Infusion in the Thunder Herald, so that they trigger each other. So that, when one pops, it pops the other one, that triggers the other one. And then you have these massive screen wipes. So yeah, that's where most of our screen clear is coming from. And then our big ability to trigger it is Ice Strike. So Ice Strike is our main ability. We're getting around 180,000 DPS as a base on Ice Strike just by doing nothing. But when you get into combat, what you'll do is you'll pop charged staff to electrify your staff. You'll drop the Tempest Bell and you'll start hitting the bell to get more damage, and that will ramp everything up. And then you'll be hitting like 600k-ish on bosses. So a one hit of Ice Strike will pretty much wipe the entire screen. And then on bosses, you drop the bell, you go all in on the bell, and your damage just flies and it deletes everything. Then we have Flicker Strike, which is basically a mobility. It's basically just if you see something across like a crater, you Flicker Strike over to it. If you see a big group of mobs like around a windy corridor, you Flicker Strike through them all and get to the other side. So it's really good for mobility. It's really good in breaches for just getting all the way across the breach really fast. Anything like that is really good for. You can also pop it on bosses to zigzag between the boss and the bell and deal pretty good damage. But yeah, that's the build. It's easily my favorite build so far in PoE 2. But let's get into now the gems and the gear and all that sort of stuff if you're looking to make it yourself. And also when this build comes out, the build guide will be updated. So this is the build guide. If you come down to here, we've got the early game version for when you just hit endgame. We've got this version here, which is more focused on, when you've got a few extra gem slots, when you're up to 4 slots and you're starting to push tier 15 maps. And then this one we're talking about now, I've just updated. This is the final version that does pretty much everything in the game. So this is all going to be updated, ready with all the gems, the passive tree, all that sort of stuff. Okay, so on the gems, Ice Strike is our main ability. So if you don't know what that does, it converts 80% of physical damage to cold damage. So anywhere we can get physical, anywhere we can get cold is a damage increase for this ability. We take Martial Tempo for 25% attack speed, Consecrate Effect for area damage. We go for Primal Armament for elemental damage, Heft for physical damage, and then Inspiration for less mana cost. The reason we do that is because as our attack speed goes up and as the ranks of the spells goes up, so I've got this at 20, as it goes up, the mana cost gets higher and higher and higher. If you're dropping the bell and you're just wailing on it with massive attack speed, your mana just drops to 0. So yeah, as how much you're putting into Ice Strike goes up, you'll start to need Inspiration, which works out well because if you only have 4 slots, you should be able to get on top of your mana. By the time you're at this point, you probably want 5 slots and drop in Inspiration. And then we take Flicker Strike. This is just pure mobility. I take Perpetual Charge for a chance not to consume a charge, and then Momentum for after moving 2 meters, you deal more damage because it is a mobility ability. And I will say, if you're looking to make drastic changes to this build, this is probably one that can go for something else. If you have something really good that you want to put in here, this can go. You can go without using this, but I really like the mobility. I've tried Blink, I've tried a few other things, and I just always come back to Flicker Strike, so it's preference. Then we have Tempest Bell. Overabundance have +1 to limit, so you can drop an additional. We have Font of Rage, so the way Rage works is the more rage we have, the more damage we have. So if we have Font of Rage, whenever we have the bell, we have Rage, and then we have the Rage gem as well, which means every hit we're getting more rage. So you hit the rage cap very fast. In seconds, you hit the rage cap, which gives you a big damage boost. And then we take Font of Mana, so whenever the bell's down, we're getting mana back, which is how you get away with using Ice Strike without inspiration early on. Okay, now for Charge Staff, the really cool ability where we get this blue glow come out of both sides of the staff. We take Persistence on this for 40% more duration, so it lasts longer. And then we take Conduction, more chance to shock. Now, one thing to know is Charge Staff needs power charges to use. You have to use a power charge, and then it will give you this lightning staff for a certain amount of time. The more charges you use, the longer it lasts. Similarly, to Flicker Strike, we need power charges. There's nothing in this build to generate power charges, and they're just like little buffs that'll appear here. When you have a power charge, it'll appear up here. So what we do, the way we get around not having power charges is we use Combat Frenzy. Gain a Frenzy charge when you freeze, electrocute, or pin an enemy. So every time we attack an enemy, we have a chance to freeze it, we have a chance to electrocute it, so we're constantly getting frenzy charges. So you'll easily hit your frenzy cap after a couple of enemies or a couple of seconds on a pack. Then, if you go into the skill tree, we take this node up here. Let me just find it. Gain power charges instead of frenzy charges, so resonance. So yeah, whenever you just fight a monster, you freeze it, you electrocute it, all happens automatically, happens every couple of seconds. You'll be gaining frenzy charges, but they'll instantly turn into power charges. So you'll constantly have power charges just by playing the game. And then you can use that on your charge staff, and you can use it on your Flicker Strike. So yeah, you never have to worry about it. And you don't need specific abilities like the palm attacks to gain those charges for you. All just happens automatically. Okay, onto our heralds. We have Herald of Ice, which has the lightning infusion, as we talked about at the start. Then we take Magnified Effect for area of effect. We take Glaciation for freeze buildup, and we take Frost Nexus that leaves a chilled ground, which helps trigger more frost buildup. We take Herald of Thunder, and then we put the cold infusion in again so they trigger each other. Then we go for Ambush, 100% more crit on enemies at full life because that helps again trigger the shatters. We go for Culling Strike to gain a chance to instantly defeat rare and unique enemies. So if you hover over Culling Strike, there's a chance to defeat them when they're at low health. Then we go for Ice Bite, which is you gain damage as cold damage on freezing an enemy with support skills. So, okay, so that's pretty much all of the damage. Now let's go over the two final defensives that we have. So we have Grim Feast. I'm just going to hide this to show you these. So Grim Feast, the way this works is as you defeat an enemy, it will leave like a little white wisp, this little white thing on the ground. You walk over it, pick it up, and you gain a chunk of energy shield. So you can see here I gain 200 energy shield. The reason that's good is because that can go above your cap. It can go above your max energy shield. So down here, I've got 3,700. As you pick up these little things, it will double to about 7,000. Is that right? Yeah, over 7,000. So this is really, really good, especially when you're just getting into endgame. Your gear isn't that good. Say you have 2,000 energy shields, this would give you up to 4,000. And it's not like, oh, for 20 seconds, it's permanent. This stays on whenever you're in the map. So really, really good. A massive amount of survivability comes from Grim Feast. Then we take Clarity for mana regen because this is always active. Finally, we go for Wind Dancer. Wind Dancer is just more evasion. You see here, we have it just automatically. You just constantly have more evasion. So as you're just doing nothing, you're constantly building up evasion. And then as you're attacked, you trigger this little Gale ability. But the main reason we want this is the evasion. You having a constant increase to our evasion gives us a ton of survivability, which is really good on a monk. Okay, now let's talk gear. It's very easy to follow a build guide and, copy down the passive tree, copy down the gem setup, and get to a place where you have a similar build. But someone could be on 200,000-300,000 DPS, and you're on 30,000-40,000. And that's probably because of the gear. It's probably because of certain things on certain pieces of gear that look better than they are, or certain things that sound good, and then you take them, and they don't give you the massive jump in damage that you might think. So I want to go over it in quite a bit of detail. So first, let's talk about probably the most important thing in this build, and it's the chest piece. So if we go into the passive tree real quick, there's an ability in the monk. There's an ability in the monk here called Lead Me Through Grace. Gain 1 spirit for every 6 energy shield on body armor, and gain 1 spirit for every 15 evasion on body armor. So as a monk, we can't get anything from plus 10 spirit on your neck or anything, or things like that. So what we want is a chest piece with enough stats to cover us to have all of our different spirit, because we have quite a lot of spirit abilities. We've got Herald of Ice, Herald of Thunder, Grim Feast, Wind Dancer, Combat Charge, Combat Frenzy. So we've got a lot of spirit abilities, which means you need a pretty hefty chest piece. This is mine. I've got 1,000 evasion, 400 energy shield. And if you're if you're not playing, you know, solo self-found, it's really not that, it's not that crazy to get something like this. It's not like 10 divines. It's very, very easy to get something that's like 800-900 evasion, 300-400 energy shield. It's really not that bad. I've also got intelligence on there, which we'll talk about why we want stuff like that. So yeah, try and get yourself as a priority. You know, if you're just building this out, the first thing I'll be looking for is a chest piece with a good amount of evasion, a good amount of energy shield. The second item I'll be looking for is the Hand of Wisdom and Action Furtive Wraps. These give you some dex, some in, and they give you increased attack speed per 25 dex and increased lightning damage per 10 intelligence. Now, one of the most, you know, broken, busted endgame builds is a stat stacker build, where you just take tons and tons of stats and scale it with things like this. This is not a stat stacker build. Very far from it. This is not a stat stacking build. Make that very clear. You don't need to go anywhere near that. However, the gloves alone add so much to this build, there's nothing that competes. If you look at the damage here, 182,000 right now. If I take this off, we drop like 60, 70,000. And you can put on gloves that give like cold damage or that give like some sort of stats, but they don't compete with these gloves. So I definitely go and grab these. They drop from the Breachstone boss. So if you do some breaches, you get some breach shards and you go and beat that boss. Even on the lowest difficulty, you beat that boss, it can drop these. So I'd go and get those, or you can trade for them. They're very, because they dropped so much on a fairly entry level boss, you can get them, you can trade for them very, very cheaply. Yeah, so that's the second thing. The third thing I'd be going for is a quarterstaff. This is where like lots of your damage comes from, and it's very easy to go wrong. So here's mine. Again, you can see it's got these the soul cores give elemental damage with attacks. Physical damage would give very similar. I think I had like 175 before I put these in, just with iron runes. I've got 140 physical, 70 elemental, and then added physical. All of that works really, really well. If you go to Alva and you go buy or sell and you just buy a bunch of quarterstaffs, this is what I do. All bad, all bad. And then I would just sell these all again, and I would just buy them all again. We go again. Here you go. So this one has 178 to lightning and +3 to melee. I mean, you can also do this. You can also like increase to see the next thing. And you can also, once you have a couple, you can reforge them 3 into 1. But just in a rush to show you, this is all I do here. I'd go here. I'd go, here we go, grants life. And then I go increase physical, some cold, some accuracy, pretty good. You would up the quality as high as you can get it. You'd pop some slots in it. You drop some iron runes in it. And then with that, and you know, this quick staff, you drop this in, we've got 123k. So you can make a pretty basic staff just by doing that. Just by getting some good rolls, you can get yourself a good starting staff, especially if you're playing like solo self-found. So that's what I would do. I'd say the main things you want to be looking for: physical, elemental damage, cold damage, probably not so much lightning on this build. Dex and intelligence work really well to scale with the gloves. I personally would avoid plus to melee skills. This has got +3 to melee skills, the thing we just did. I would avoid plus to melee skills purely because it would drain your mana hard. If you're not finding you have a mana issue, cool. I went set a staff with +4 to melee skills and it just ruined my mana. Let's just for fun. Oh, we've got a third slot. There we go. Got a little third slot. Anyway, distracted. Okay, next things to go for. Rings. Rings are very, very important. So we want to go cold damage. Cold damage is the key on our rings. You can see here, 30 to 45 cold damage to attacks, and then 45% increased cold damage on that ring. Flip to the other ring, and we have 30 to 54 cold damage and 28% increased cold damage. Get whatever you can craft. I do a ton of breaches, so I got quite lucky with just going through way too many breach rings to eventually find ones that I wanted. I've got a guide on farming breaches for breach rings if you have never done that. But basically, you do the breaches, you get the breach rings, use the essences to put things on the rings. So I would use the cold essence to put cold on the rings as a starting point. And that's it. Then you know, they're your rings. I also went for elemental resistances on one of my rings. I would try and get this on both personally, because then that just means, you know, you got more elemental resistances covered, and then you can be more more choosy on the rest of your gear because you're not worried so much about different, I need to get cold resistance, I need to get lightning resistance, stuff like that. Then, once we have good rings, I would do this after you have really good rings. If you say have 5 divines and you're looking to buy some rings, don't worry about the belt. Go get the rings. The rings are the most important thing. Get the rings. Then when you have good rings, get this belt here, the Ingenuity Utility Belt. What this does, it increases the bonuses from your equipped rings. You got cold damage, you got more cold damage. You got, whatever you've got on there gets buffed up really high. And the way this works is the more divines you drop, the bigger this number gets. Everybody wants this belt. It's pretty much the best in slot for every build almost, I think. So yeah, this is going to set you back if you trade in for this, or if you're farming it, good luck. But yeah, this is just a damage increase. I'll show you. It's nothing crazy. It's like what, 20, 30k? If we took up a ring, you see we're going down 30k too. So I would get the rings first. Once you got good rings, try and get the Ingenuity Belt. And then on everything else just kind of falls into place really. Everything else, just movement speed on the boots, intelligence and dexterity where you can get it, energy shield where you can get it. That's it really. There's nothing else too crazy. Plus to elemental resistances again on the neck, energy shield, things like that. As a filler, attack speed, crit, things like that are all nice as well. But yeah, that's the gear. That's pretty much everything. Hopefully I've gone into enough depth, but on the build guide, I will also show in every position what I would be looking for. If this was too long, the build guide will just have it all in one place and you can just click that and oh, what do I get on my rings? And there, it'll be there. So yeah, that's all the gear. Okay, finally onto the passive tree. Let's go here. So on the ascendancy part, we would go left and we'd get Lead Me Through Grace, which is where we get all our spirit from. We'd go down here to I am the Blizzard for cold damage, I am the Thunder for lightning damage, and then I am the Rage for Unbound Avatar. There's an ability that goes on our hotbar. Once we fill, once we hit 100, we get like a scaling buff the more damage we deal. Once we hit 100, we can pop Unbound Avatar. When we pop it, we gain 40% elemental damage and 80% more to ailments. It's really good. You're on a boss, you pop this, damage goes crazy. You're in like, I don't know, a breach or an ultimatum. You're surrounded by enemies, you pop this, everything just melts. I love it. If you're finding yourself, I've been in this position where it's on your bar and you're just not using it, and you can feel yourself not using it, you can go into Sunday enemies instead for a nice elemental resistances. But yeah, I like Unbound Avatar. I like how it feels. I like pressing the button and just go in full damage mode. But yeah, that's the ascendancy. All right, let's go onto skill tree. Again, it's all going to be in the build guide. We come up to here, we whip around here for evasion, and we come down to here for movement speed, mana, dex, and int. We go up to here for crit. We go up to here for crit damage and crit chance. And then we go up and get these clusters as well for crit chance here, mana, maximum energy shield, and maximum energy shield there. We want to get everything. The main things we look for is crit chance, crit damage, energy shield, attack speed, cold damage, lightning damage is good, evasion is good. That's pretty much everything we're looking for in the skill tree. Coming up to here, we take this for attack speed. We take this for increased attack on full life, increased attack on low life. We come up to here and we get this big cluster here because this is all crit chance and crit damage. We get this here, the resonance, which I've already talked about. That's how we get free frenzy charges, free power charges. We turn our frenzy charges into power charges. Go up to here and you get this cluster here for attack speed. Then we go all the way up here and we get Spectral Ward, +1 to max energy shield per 12 evasion on body armor, which we'll have a lot of because we are using Lead Me Through Grace. Okay, up to the top, you want to come left along here and you want to go to the gem slot and you want to get Chaos Inoculation. Max life becomes 1, immune to chaos damage. Now, there's a lot of things that can go, hit your life bar, and we don't have much life. So doing this takes that out. We don't have to worry about anything that's classed as chaos damage. And if you look at it, chaos damage is the least common energy type and removes twice as much energy shield as the damage value when taken. By having this, we can just stack our energy shield as high as possible and not worry about any of that damage. Okay, this cluster here, I take a few of these freeze builds up. I'd probably take this one here and then grab that cold damage, and that would be it. I'm going to put my next 2 points in here. Then coming along, another gem slot. Down to here, we take the quarterstaff section. Down to here for increased crit damage, 25 dex. Up to here for attack speed with quarterstaffs, and increase everything, especially freeze build-up and defenses when using a quarterstaff. Down to here, we take the herald section. So we have the increased damage when affected by a herald, down to 50% increased cold, fire, lightning, all that stuff. Down here, we have another crit section, crit chance, crit damage. Attacks have increased crit chance. And then we go all along this dex section here. We go all the way down to here for 100% evasion rating from body armor, massive. Along here, we have 25 dex. And with those gloves, 25 dex is 3% attack speed as well. Come along, and we go down to here for 1% attack speed per 15 dex. That's the skill tree. That's everything. The only other thing to really talk about is jewels. So we have a lot of jewel slots here. I think we've got 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, 4. So much of your damage comes from jewels. So if I open this and I take out a jewel, you can see here we've got 182,000. If I take out this jewel, we just lost 10,000 damage. Go up to here, we just lost like 8,000 damage. So a lot of our damage comes from our jewels. So I would try really hard to get good jewels. The things you want to be looking for is, you can see here, increased attack speed, increased attack damage, increased damage with quarterstaffs, increased cold damage, increased lightning damage, increased elemental damage. We have one for herald skills that can drop as well. Herald skills deal up to 20% increased damage. That's massive. Crit chance, crit damage is really good. Anything like that, you know, just get an emerald, identify it. It's probably gonna have something useful, something that we can use in our build. So I just do that. You're gonna get a lot of like stats you don't need roll on there, like charm stuff, anything that you might have like really good stuff, like 3 things that are really good for your build, and then plus damage with bows, and you'd still use it because it's worth using for everything else. You can also find these time loss jewels. These ones that have a big area of effect, which works well in like a cluster here. I have this one here, which gives 1% increased elemental damage and 1 rage on melee hit to things around it, which is pretty nice. You could also just stick in a normal red gem as +1 rage to attacks. That would work as well. Yeah, that's it. That's pretty much everything. That's pretty much everything there is to say about this build. If you have any questions, let me know. I've played this build for so long. I adore it. It's easily my favorite so far. So if you have any questions, I'll try my best to answer them. There's a lot of flexibility if you want to change certain things. You can do a lot with this. It can go a lot of different ways. You can go more into the stat stacking side if you're absolutely loaded, or you can just keep it fairly affordable and you can still do tier 15 maps easily with this. So yeah, that's everything. Hope you've enjoyed it. If you like this style of guide, if you've seen my other videos and my other guides for PoE2, do consider subscribing to the channel. I do my best to make these as informative as possible, even if I do ramble them up to like, 20 minutes. So yeah, thank you so much for watching. Yeah, that's it from me. Take care, and I'll catch you in the next one.